for coming along. Those standing by the door there's some seats over the other side if you want to come around. And so thank you very much indeed to Borna for having helped organize this. Also, it's not normal a guy comes here wearing shorts into a lecture theatre. That's because I'm in the middle of this project, the third of the projects of cross-border rail, investigating international railways in different parts of the European Union. So I was actually, this is a picture taken just yesterday in my project at the Unna line between Bihać and Knin. This is the first border crossing south of Bihać. This is the Bosnian side, and this is the Croatian side here, on this line that used to be the fastest connection between Zagreb and Split. The problem comes, however, is beyond this point. There are 7 times the track is crossing from today's Bosnian Federation into today's Croatia. But even further north from there, you have the internal Bosnian border between the Bosnian Federation and Republika Srpska, which makes the situation even more complicated. Anyway, so on the website of the project, there are some more pictures of this, and I haven't really fully processed that. But anyway, the joy of this project is I go to amazing places, meet interesting people, and then try to diagnose what the situation is with the railways on the ground. And that's why the lecture had to happen today, because today is literally my only day in Zagreb, because tomorrow I'm going investigating Pula, Divača, and Rijeka to Pivka. On Friday I'm going to Čakovec. On Saturday I'm going to Osijek, and then I'm even going to the railway station for the Orient Express murder in Strizivojne Polje on Sunday. Everything I say is on the record, and the link at the bottom also gives the, you can download the files. So what am I doing here, and why am I running this crazy project in the first place? Now, the important point is, I think many Europeans understand the threat of climate change, and the threat of climate change also means we need to change our personal behavior. That means flying less and driving less, and taking trains and buses more. That basic need I find pretty much everywhere in Europe. Whether people can act on that is the difficult question, at an individual level or at a political level. Now, if you've ever tried booking an international railway ticket, it is a matter of considerable frustration, right? Try and work out how to literally get a ticket, right? I had one coming for this evening. I could not book online the Zagreb to Ljubljana train I'm taking this evening. So instead I booked to Villach in Austria, because I could buy that online, and it was cheaper, and I will just get off in Ljubljana, right? That is an everyday complexity. It is because the digitization of the Austrian railways is better than the digitization of the Croatian or the Slovenian railways. Now, that's a relatively, for me, a normal example, but you have these problems everywhere. Try crossing the border from Portugal to Spain. It's a catastrophe. Try crossing the border from France to Germany, and it's likewise a mess. Now, I'm not a person from the railway sector or the railway industry. My job is teaching people about political communication. That was my job. And I live in Berlin, and the people I teach are in Brussels, Bruges, Maastricht, Geneva, Rome, and Copenhagen. And I would try to take the train to go and do my business trips, and it would fail very often. I would be stuck at the border, and I would get frustrated. And I asked myself, rather than writing books and working about things to do with European Union politics, well, why is the EU not fixing these international railway problems? And out of that came this project called Cross-Border Rail. So it was a project, and it's crowd-funded by the readers of my blog, so it's completely independent of any railway company. A 2022 project to cross all of the internal borders of the European Union that you can cross by train. So every pair of countries where there is one railway line, I went to every single border at least once. Right? Now, not to every single line, but at least to every border. Where there were no trains, cross the border on a folding bicycle, right? So the folding bicycle is parked outside in front of the faculty. In 2023, I did some smaller projects where I went back to all of Germany's borders again and once more to Spain and Portugal. That's my kind of nightmare scenario, going to Spain and Portugal, so that's done, thank goodness. And now I'm starting a project on the non-EU borders in southeastern Europe. So I'm going to all 6 countries in southeastern Europe, not in the European Union. That's why the last week I've been in Bosnia, and then next I'm going then on to Serbia and North Macedonia and so on. It's all mapped of everywhere I've been. That was the 2022 project. It's also cut off. I went to the north of Sweden. I went to Lisbon. I went to Athens. And these are all of the places I'm going in this region. In the next, I'm basically about a quarter of the way through. All of this part here, Banja Luka, Sarajevo, the line to Ploče, for example, I've covered and researched already. I'm now going to Slovenia-Croatia borders, making my way down here, finally to Sofia, then to Greece, and then finally taking the Grand Old Train from Podgorica through to Belgrade, and from there going home. Before I started the Balkan project, it's 206 borders, and I've crossed about 10 borders this week. So I've been to 206 border lines. That number was correct as of 2 weeks ago. 600 trains and more than 2,600 kilometers by bike. Here you can literally see a railway border. This is Czechia and this is Poland, and the sleepers change literally at the border, and there's the border stone there. Right, this is the picture of my entire project, right? I have a drone with me for aerial photographs. Poland up here, Zgorzelec. Germany down here, Görlitz. This is the Neisse River, which since 1945 has formed the border between Germany and Poland. And you see the electrification masts end in the middle of the bridge. There was a 2003 agreement between Poland and Germany to electrify the entire corridor from Wrocław to Dresden. The Poles completed their job by 2015 and built the electrification masts until the middle of the bridge as basically a provocation towards Germany, and Germany has not even started. Right, so that sums up the nature of international railway lack of collaboration. What's the problem then? National railway systems in Europe work comparatively well, but once you cross a border by train, everything gets more complicated. The infrastructure, the level of service, the timetables, and the ticketing are all of poorer quality. And because these problems are cross-border, EU action is needed to fix them, and that also applies in non-EU southeastern Europe, because the European Union is investing in Serbia, in Bosnia, in Montenegro, and they need to make sure that also in this region they don't repeat the same errors that they made at internal borders of the European Union. And when you travel to these borders, you find one of four types of problems, basically. Some places the tracks have fallen into disrepair. In other places, there are tracks, but passenger trains are not running. Some places trains run, but the timetables are poor. And in the fourth, there are information or ticketing problems that make crossing the border complicated. So I'm going to talk about some examples of each of those, and mostly from broadly this region. So we're here at the first case concerns the border of Austria to Slovenia, near the border town of Bad Radkersburg, Gornja Radgona. Now, the red line, I took a train. The grey line, I had to cycle. That's beyond the railway station of Bad Radkersburg. The tracks end in the bushes. This, on the other side, is the railway line in Gornja Radgona. You can actually see it's more or less intact, but there is nothing running there at the moment. Some nice little gardens next to the railway here. But this is the problem. This is where the railway bridge used to be across the river between Gornja Radgona and Bad Radkersburg. This border was set here in 1919 at the dissolution of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the end of World War I, but there was still a railway bridge. The railway bridge was destroyed by the retreating Nazi army in 1945, so they got rid of the railway bridge. You can just see the foundation of the railway bridge in the river. The problem, however, is up there. In the 1980s, Bad Radkersburg decided to build its new school for the town on the route of the former railway. So even if you were to rebuild this railway bridge, you can't actually get round to the railway station anymore because there is a school built in the way. Because when they actually made that decision in the 1980s, no one thought they were going to need the railway again. Now, there are currently arguments about whether you could somehow reroute it outside of the town, but at the moment, that one is not coming back because of a historical decision which was made to prevent that reconnection. There are lots of places like that, things which were destroyed when borders were redrawn, or things that were destroyed in war. Right, so a different case, Slovenia, Italy this time, between the twin towns of Gorizia and Novogorica. Now, Novogorica is European Capital of Culture 2025 with the slogan, Go! Well, you can't go by train, unfortunately, or at least across the border you can't. So here, there is Gorizia Centrale station and somewhere up here, that Novogorica station. And there's this little piece of track here connecting the two, which doesn't have any passenger trains. So there is a track, but there are no passenger trains running on it. That's what the track looks like, taken by a friend of mine on a special train, because I've never taken the train here. There's no normal service. There's one little station on the line. Indeed, even the line actually forms literally part of the border between Slovenia and Italy. And the town square in front of Novogorica station, the border runs right the way through that. It's quite an amazing place. Now, for technical reasons, I can happily answer or go into more if you want, you actually have to run the Slovenian train through to Italy rather than the other way round. But essentially, you could extend trains from Jesenice to Novogorica. You just extend them to Gorizia Centrale, and it would bind the two parts of the city together. But it isn't done because so far the Slovenians didn't have enough trains and the Italians haven't had any will in order to fix this problem. Right, another one, this time for Croatia. The connection from Ljubljana via Novo Mesto through the border station of Metlika to Karlovac. So a nice modern Slovenian train if you're arriving in Metlika, all good. This is the border bridge, all looks nice and orderly if you are between Metlika and the village of Bubnjaci on the Croatian side. And flying the drone kind of in through the bridge, that's what you see in the bridge. They suspended the train service across this bridge at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and they didn't restart it afterwards, despite the fact it's only 4 kilometers of track between Metlika and Bubnjaci, and the fact that Croatia has joined Schengen since. So they basically put the barrier in the bridge to stop people walking across the bridge and have not actually restarted the cross-border railway service. Now, there's a problem here that the infrastructure is not in a good state on the line between Bubnjaci and Karlovac. It's very low speed, but nevertheless, it's very easy to just run to the first station after the border instead of the last station before the border. So this would be an easy one to fix. Now, what about a different problem? Timetables. So if we're at the main line through the Alps between France and Italy, between Chambéry and Torino. So at the moment, this track is actually blocked by a landslide, but it's normally the main line between France and Italy. So forget the landslide for a minute. In the daytime, you have and when it's running, you have high-speed trains run by two different companies, the Italian State Railways and the French State Railways, which connect Milan to Paris. And comparatively, for an international long-distance service, it's good. The problem is, there are no regional trains on that line at the border section. So if you live in a town like Chambéry, Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne or Modane on the French side, quite significant medium-sized towns, or Oulx or Bardonecchia on the Italian side, you literally cannot get to France unless you buy a ticket on the high-speed train. Now, to go the 20 kilometers on the cross-border section on the high-speed train costs the same price as going from Milan to Paris. Right? So ultimately, what you've got here is the Italian regional trains all end in Bardonecchia, the last station, and the French regional trains all start in Modane. Now, you can't even get over that border with my bicycle because there's a massive mountain in the way and an enormous tunnel between the two. Now, for technical reasons, it has to be the Italian train that crosses to the French side, not the French train that crosses to the Italian side. But ultimately, running this train a few kilometers further, you could create a cross-border connection for local people. So this is a problem where even though the infrastructure is good, there is a particular type of train that you would need, which is missing. And then last but not least, the border that frustrates me the most, France to Spain, right? So there are 5 active railway lines on the France-Spain border, and then this is my biggest success in my project so far, is getting one of these fixed. So thankfully, number 3, which is the cross-border line Irun-on-Dai at the Atlantic coast, this data problem, I've worked for 2 years to fix this data problem at that border, and I finally got it fixed thanks to the action of the European Union Agency for Railways. But I'll talk about the case number 2, which is the line here, La Tour de Carol-Puigcerdà. It would basically be the connection Toulouse through the Pyrenees here and down to Barcelona, which is just off the edge of the map. Now, if you put into an international timetable search, I want to go from La Tour de Carol, which is the border station here, and I want to go to Barcelona, which is there, and I put that into an international timetable search, it sends you first here, then there, and then down here, right? Because the train that goes from here, which exists, and actually runs comparatively often, the data for the timetable of the train is only on the website of the Rodalies de Catalunya. It's kind of like a regional train network in Catalonia. They do not share their timetable data into the international timetable databases. So you need specialist knowledge to know that that train exists, to know it's even possible to travel through La Tour de Carol. So it's a good cross-border connection, but actually the passenger information is really, really lousy. Now, you have the same situation also here at the coast, right? If you take the old line, it's a very scenic route actually along the route here, Cerbère-Port-Boulle, and you used to have the same problem at the Atlantic coast, but finally, after years of work, we've got that one fixed at the Atlantic coast. Now, it should be much easier to solve timetable and data problems like that than it is to run trains where they don't run, right? Like, this should be cheap and this should be easy. Right, so back to this region. Let's talk about some things some core lines which I'm going to be looking at in the coming weeks, and a couple of these I've been to already. So the one that Borna already talked about, Tovarnik to Šid, Bielopolia, Kumenica, so the Podgorica to Belgrade line, Metkovic to Šaplina, so Croatia to Bosnia, Blace, Hane Elizit to Kosovo, and finally Kriva Palanka to Gyushovo, so the border North Macedonia to Bulgaria. So the situation at the moment, I actually ended up not going to Belgrade but to Zvornik instead for reasons on the way to Sarajevo. As Borna explained, you take the route through Slavonski Brod and Vinkovci, and you then get to the border station Tovarnik. Now, that's what you get in the border station in Tovarnik last week. So a modern Končar HGPP train, very neat and proper, everything good. Sandwiched a bit slightly scarily in between the freight wagons in the station in Tovarnik. I put up the drone. You can see there's some freight crossing the border here. Quite significant border crossing in that regard. Nice, neat little station building here. Also significant locomotives from private freight leasing operators, which are operating here as well. This is then the other side in Šid, a different type of electrical multiple units. This time a Stadler built one instead of the Končar one on the Croatian side. And this train then runs from Šid onwards to Belgrade. Now, ultimately the simple solution here would be actually a bit like that situation at the line through the Alps. There is no technical reason, there is an administrative reason, but there is no technical reason why this Serbian train could not run to Tovarnik, or no technical reason why the Croatian train in Tovarnik could not run through to Šid, right? Now, there is 7 kilometers of track in between. Now, it would mean that although Borna's point would still be correct, there would still be no direct trains from Zagreb to Belgrade, it would at least mean you can cross that border, at least you can do it by train. At the moment you can't, and there is also no public transport from Tovarnik to Šid either, so I had to go on my bicycle zigzagging in and out of the trucks in a thunderstorm to get across that border, which was not the nicest day of my cross-border rail project. You've got to see slightly threatening skies there above Šid. Anyway, a very easy one to fix with a little bit of political will and a bit of collaboration between Serbia Voz and HGPP. So next up, Bielopolia Kumanica, so on the old classic railway line that goes all the way from Bar to Belgrade. If you've never taken this, it is an amazing, amazing railway route and is very, very worth taking. It used to have in the daytime, summertime, an old-style locomotive-hauled train, which also even had a dining car on it. And it takes you across this bridge, which is the second highest railway bridge in the world. The Chinese recently built a higher one. But anyway, it's still an amazing spot. Now, they've now replaced that traditional old train with two new modern trains, both of which have a much lower capacity. Right now, would you prefer to spend 11 hours on that one, which at least has comfortable seats and a dining car, or 3 hours on that one, changing at the border, to then 7 hours on this one, right? Now, these are basically commuter trains which are being deployed on both countries for long-distance service. So although this is progress of sorts, right? For example, these trains convey bicycles, or they also are disabled accessible. In terms of passenger comfort, this is not a step in the right direction. It is because the Serbian railways now refuse to operate passenger trains with a locomotive. They only want to deploy EMUs. And so basically they say, we don't want to collaborate with that anymore. We want to just deploy. They're having just one type of train for all of their electric passenger services, this one. And if you want to take the night train, that does still exist at least, and indeed there is even a Tito-era sleeping car, which is carriage number 465, which I'm trying to book, that you can take. If you know what you're doing, you can get the Tito sleeping car that still runs on the night train. I'll know by the end of the month whether that actually works. Right, so that needs a bit of work done to it, particularly for the daytime train, that one. Right, another one, Metkovic to Shaplinia. Now this is a weird situation. The railway line that goes through today's Bosnia then has 20 kilometers in Croatia to connect at the port of Ploče, right? So it was an important freight line to connect the port. Now, there is, from Sarajevo, a modern Spanish-built Talgo train that runs twice per day from Sarajevo through Mostar to Shaplinia. Now, it's a bit weird because the train is built for 220 kilometers per hour, and in Bosnia it doesn't go any higher than 90 kilometers per hour. But it's a nice, modern, comfortable train on slightly poor infrastructure. But okay, it's neat, right? It's modern inside, there's even a cafe. There is chronic problems with digitization in Bosnian railways. There is online booking, but when you have the online booking, you just go with your booking number to the ticket office to queue up to get a piece of paper, right? Which is not a very efficient online booking system. And you can only get the paper on the day you are literally departing, right? Which is a bit ridiculous. Now, for example, HŽPP and Serbia Voz have both introduced digital ticketing in the last 2 years, and it works very, very well. So you've seen in recent times considerable progress on digital ticketing in both Croatia and Serbia. Now, you could do this very easily in Bosnia as well. Now, I had a very, very funny circumstance in the railway station in Sarajevo. So, first let me explain the service. So, if you take the train from Sarajevo supposedly to Ploče, right? It starts with a ZFBH electric locomotive of series 441. That's why I have that on this T-shirt for the project, right? And the HŽPP, they have a very similar looking one. They've renumbered it to series 1141, but it's basically the same locomotive, right? Yeah, built in Concha, right, exactly. And rebuilt with Concha recently as well, right? So all good, right? The problem is, so this one from the Bosnians could run the whole way to Ploče, or this one from the Croatians could run the whole way to Sarajevo. No problem. Problem is politics. They don't trust each other. So they changed the locomotive for the final 20 kilometers at the border. So they changed the locomotive at Shaplinia. Now, this Croatian one, they drag it through Bosnia to get it to Ploče in the first place, right? Now, this is just absurd because it wastes 20 minutes on your trip to change the locomotive at the border, despite the fact that you're changing locomotives for exactly the same one, right? Now, the problem was I wanted to go to Ploče, and there was supposed to be a train to Ploče, only there wasn't a train to Ploče because the Bosnians had printed even paper timetables saying from 7th of June there is a train to Ploče. There is not a train to Ploče. It starts 28th of June. So you could book an online ticket for a train that did not exist, which was quite an interesting concept in public communication. Anyway, very simple to fix. Run the Bosnian locomotive to Ploče or run the Croatian locomotive to Sarajevo, and it would save at least some time at the border. And indeed, it must be said, you see in the railways in Bosnia, the quality of the track is in many places actually okay. You see that actually it was not that long ago a very solid railway. Also actually going north of Sarajevo through Zenica to Doboj, actually the track is still in quite a good condition. Compare it, for example, to rural Serbia, or indeed actually parts of Croatia around Osijek. The quality of the railway track is actually better in Bosnia than in some parts of Croatia and Serbia, and the speed's a bit higher. Anyway, so I got only as far as Šaplína because I couldn't get any further as a result of the non-existent train. So I've literally not actually been to the other side of that border because I was kind of let down by the non-existing. Anyway, a couple of others and then I stop. Big political dispute between North Macedonia and Kosovo. There used to be a train. The only way of getting to Kosovo by train was from Skopje. The European Union has invested in a new line connecting through there because the quality of the infrastructure was bad. But something has happened. And no one has been able to tell me yet what happened and why they stopped building. So I'm going to go on the bicycle with the drone and go and see what happened. I want to find out why this isn't running. But at some point in the next few weeks, I will know and I will have worked it out. And last but not least, one which could be really interesting, a brand new line between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. So the yellow route to Kustendil, this is an existing but only diesel railway line. I'm going to cycle across the border to the most significant town on the other side of the border, Kriva Palanka. And this section of track is apparently being built at the moment from Kriva Palanka to Kumanovo to mean there would be, at least mostly for freight, a brand new railway connection there. But the problem is that in North Macedonia, the state of the railway is really decrepit and everything is breaking. Apparently at the moment they have only 3 working passenger trains for the entire country. So building a new line when the country into which you're building the line actually doesn't have functional trains, we'll see how that is on the ground. Oh yeah, that's Kustendil station, and at the moment the last bit you would have to do by bus. But anyway, I will learn something new there, and we'll see how that is on the ground. So that is all from me. A picture from Doboj station of a Končar built Republika Srpska locomotive. And 1971, this one was built, it said on the plaque on the side. Anyway, I will stop, and now the floor is yours for your questions, comments, remarks, or indeed, if you know any of these borders and you want to tell me something about those borders in this region or anywhere else, the floor is yours for your questions and comments. Go for it. Okay. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much. All right.